whatever that is. My name's Robert. I'm one of the pastors here at Epicentre Church, and we are in a series which I'll explain in a minute. It is on money and it is on giving, but I'll unpack that. But before we do that, I want to open with a couple of questions that I think you'll relate with, and so be helpful. This is on. First question is this. The question is this: why does money create so much stress? Like, money, unlike anything else, outside of if you're a parent, kids, nothing else creates stress like money does. Like, there's nearly nothing else in life that will keep you awake, that will keep you filled with anxiety or stress like money does. Like, I get that kids will do that. As well. There's a few other things in life that will do that, but consistently money does. And then perhaps that's not where you're at yet, but maybe the push that you're getting at the moment is like, what career do I need to choose? And then so that can end up laying on a stress of what career do I need to choose as far as moving forward in my life? What's that going to look like? Which comes back to it's creating stress. Like, money starts creating stress and it keeps creating stress. And then the second question is this, because this is what we're talking about. Started last week, continuing this week, going to be ending next week, is generosity. And it's this, like, why is generosity something that we admire in others, but so often something that we struggle to outwork ourselves? Like, all of us would agree, I'd assume anyways, all of us would agree that we admire honestly generous people. Not maliciously generous people, but honestly generous people that just want to be a generous individual, like generous with their finances, generous with their time, generous with their speech, just generous in life. We admire those people. And this is what I've noted, and you've probably found the same thing. There are people that maybe you don't despise them, but you really struggle with them. Really, really struggle with that individual until you find out that they are an exceedingly generous person. And it mightn't flip your opinion on them to where you want to invite them for dinner or you want to be best friends with them, but at least it makes you sit up and question and rethink, like, you think about them. And so we admire generous people, but the reality is that so many of us, myself included, we wrestle with it, struggle with it, being generous individuals. And so, a couple of rhetorical thoughts or questions to pose for that. What if? What if money isn't really a financial issue? But what if, and this is what I'm going to try and argue or talk about or try and teach this morning. This is what Jesus has to say, and this is what the Bible has to say, that what if it's this? What if it is actually an alignment issue? The issue is, and the stress is, and the struggle with generosity is, it's less a financial and it's more an alignment issue. And so that's what I'm going to try and teach about this morning and extract and highlight a story of what Jesus walked someone through, as well as some of Jesus' teachings. But to start with, we are in a series called Bigger Than You, and where we are talking about generosity and finances and giving and things like that. And what I'm not saying is it's bigger than you because it needs to be like your donation or your generosity or how generous you are to organizations and individuals, that dollar amount is like incredibly bigger than you. But the impact that it makes is bigger than you, which is what we talked about last week, that the impact of our generosity, the smallest impact, the smallest donation, gift, like for whatever that looks like, it makes an impact that is far bigger than what we could ever truly imagine. And so there's some caveats that I started with last week that I'll continue on this week, that what I'm not trying to do, I'm not trying to twist your arm and force you to give or convince you to give or make you feel that you're obliged to give. But this is what I am trying to do. I am trying to inspire you, encourage you, challenge you, perhaps stretch you could be good language when it comes to generosity. And so, with that thought in mind, if you're new to Jesus, or you're trying to work Jesus out, and you're not sure where you sit, like whether you're all in for Jesus or you're trying to navigate that sphere, like this is what I believe, that throughout this series, last week included, this week as well as next week, there's so much that you can take from this, and I'm convinced that if you follow this, your life will get better. But primarily, the people that I'm trying to talk to in this series is the people that, for lack of better words, have put their hand up and said that I am all in when it comes to Jesus. Like, I am all in when it comes to Jesus. And not just all in when it comes to Jesus, I am all in for Jesus and his church. Like, I have a king and I'm following my king. His name is Jesus. And so primarily that's what the people that I'm trying to talk to through this series. But regardless of where you sit, I'm convinced that there is so much that you can take and apply this, and it will make your world, your life, a whole lot better. And so last week we started this series, and so the idea that we tried to extract last week was this: that generosity is a predetermined, calculated, and designated act of worship. Like, generosity is an extension of our worship. Like singing songs, chicky-babbering, like everything that comes, that is worship. But generosity is just as equally worship as singing songs and lifting hands and praying and all that. Generosity is worship. And generosity, what we looked at last week, was predetermined, calculated, and designated, meaning this, that you have predetermined that you're going to give to said organization, what organization, church, whatever it is. It's a predetermined act that you predetermined that you're going to give. Then it's calculated. You've determined how much you are going to give, and then it's designated that you have decided where it is that you're going to give. And you're going to do that, and this is done all before you turn up there. And part of what we looked at is the difference between how we think about generosity and what generosity is. So often we look at generosity as more random acts of kindness. Like, oh, I see this need, I'm going to give to that, I'm going to give to that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but they're like the add-ons of generosity. Like, they're good things, but they're the add-ons of generosity. A generous person has a generous lifestyle, and it starts here. I have predetermined, calculated, and designated what I'm going to do with my finance. And so this morning, I want to continue on with kind of that theme and talk about it from this perspective, that generosity is about aligning your heart. And so this morning I want to talk about alignment and how money works with that, and how our generosity works in that and outworks with that. And so the big idea that I want to try and get across this morning is this: when it comes to aligning your heart or alignment with our finances, with our generosity, it looks like this. When you give, like when you outwork with generosity, when you give, your treasure moves and your heart moves with it. How many of you have bought a car and say you always drove a Ford or a Holden, whichever part of the debate you want to sit on, and you've always bought the one type of car, and then you buy another type of car, and prior to buying that car, you'd never seen that car, kind of. You see it sometimes, but you never really noticed it. And then you bought this new car. It's like, say it's a Kia Carnival. And you've never, yes, you know they exist. You see them here and there, but right? You've never really seen them. And then you buy your Kia Carnival. I've got actually no idea what a Kia Carnival looks like. It's the only thought that came to my head. It's a mum van. It's soccer mum. Yeah. Okay. It's Hannah's car, okay? And this would be case in point to me, because I don't know what they look like, what they are. But you buy your Kia Carnival, and then all of a sudden you see your Kia Carnival everywhere. You pull up at the traffic lights, and there's one beside you. There's another one coming this way on the other side of the road. You pull into the service station, and there's one leaving the service station. Like, all of a sudden, you see that car absolutely everywhere. And here's the reality. It's not like the car makers all of a sudden flooded the market with that particular type of car at the exact moment that you bought it. What it is you've invested in something, and now all of a sudden you see it absolutely everywhere. And so what's happened is that your treasure has moved. You've placed something somewhere, and it's opened your insight and your eyes to see that, oh my gosh, the world exists full of Kia Carnivals. I never knew it. I never noticed. And what's happened is your treasure's moved, and then what's followed on is that your heart has moved with it. Jesus says it like this in Matthew 6. He says, wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also. I have spent nearly my entire life reading it like this: where your heart is, there your treasure is. as far as where my heart is, the desires of my heart is, that's where my generosity goes. But that's not at all what Jesus is saying. What he's saying is, where your treasure is, there your heart is. Meaning this, that my heart is over here, and I start using my treasure or putting my treasure here, and my heart starts following towards my treasure. So I'm over here, but if I give, if I invest, then my heart starts catching up to my treasure. And the reality is that we would know this, that the truth is that our treasure follows our heart. Like if I like coffee, I start buying lots of coffee, right? Whatever you like, you start investing in. You start giving to, you start engaging with, because that's where your heart is. And what Jesus is highlighting here, he's highlighting this upside down way of living, which if you're a Jesus follower and reader and you're aware of how Jesus does things and talks about things, you'll know that he is king of the upside down way of living. As far as some of the upside down suggestions that he makes, that if you want to be a leader, be the best servant. Like, so if you want to lead, you need to serve, or some other ones that if you want to be first, you need to be last, or if you want to save your life, you need to lose your life. And he's talking about this upside down way of living. And what he's trying to get at with this is that if you choose to live how the world lives, fine, fantastic, it's not going to transform you. But if you choose to live in this upside down way of living, it will do something. It will begin to align your heart with his kingdom, with his calling, with his heart. And so ultimately what Jesus is trying to get at is he's highlighting this, that it's an upside down comment that lands at a right side up way of living. And so what he's sharing with in the Sermon on the Mount with the people that are sitting there is that here is an upside down way of living that will lead to like an upside down comment that will land at a right side up way of living, in that it's going to do something. And ultimately it's this: it will align your heart with God, which is the very thing that I'm wanting to extract this morning. And so to do that, I want to walk us through as quickly as I can. It's a big story. And it's a story that you'll be so well aware of, especially if you've been in church for a long period of time. You'll know this story. It's a story from Luke chapter 19. It's a story of Zacchaeus. And Zacchaeus is a character kind of not liked, said very politely, kind of despised, kind of hated. And he has this interaction with Jesus where he ends up flipping everything on his head. And he ultimately does this. What you see through this story is his heart shifts in alignment from one thing to another thing. And it starts changing something. So it says this: Jesus entered Jericho. This is from Luke 19, from verse 1. Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. And in that space, there was this man, and his name was Zacchaeus. So Jesus, he's marching through Jericho. And you've got to realize that Jesus' reputation, it goes before him. Like he's got Instagram followers everywhere. Everywhere he goes, people know, like people are spreading the word, spreading the gossip, and so everyone's aware. And as he comes into Jericho, Zacchaeus realizes, and he wants to do something. He wants to see Jesus. And he was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very, very, very rich. But what we've got to probably understand is that there's a couple of things with Zacchaeus. He's a chief tax collector. Which meant he was absolutely despised, because how the tax system worked in that era was that Rome would basically do this. They would farm out the collection of tax to the highest bidder. And so people would be able to make a living through effectively extorting money out of people. And so what the tax collectors would do, is that they would basically buy that share of the business, however you want to term it, and say, and it's not this, but let's just say that the tax that Rome was giving was 10 cents in the dollar. The tax collectors would make it 20 cents in the dollar. They'd give Rome their 10 cents and they'd keep the other 10 cents. But realize this, but then there was this tiered system, because this guy is the chief tax collector. He's probably not the one on the ground floor anymore taking the taxes. He's got people underneath him. He's set up that big business system, and so the money's trickling up, and it's made him incredibly wealthy. Some scholars will highlight that, and don't quote me on this, but some of the taxes, by the time they paid tax to the tax collectors in different areas and things like that all made up this corrupt system, that would be taxed of up to 70% of their income. Absolutely insane. And this guy he's the chief of them. And so he is hated, he is despised. And he is despised because Zacchaeus is a Jew. He is one of them. And he is extorting money out of them. In other words, that he is making his living stealing from his own people. And so everybody hates him. Not just him, anyone in that occupation. But which highlights a couple of unique things about Zacchaeus. And there's a couple of unique things, and they're like all frankly, what I'm about to say is an educated guess, because none of it's written, but if you study the culture and the understanding, like everything I'm about to say is an educated guess, right? So, most likely, Zacchaeus is a Jew. He's a Hebrew. Zacchaeus most likely has grown up believing in God. Most likely. Because that would be the custom. That's what they would have engaged with. That's how he would have grown up. Then on top of that, in that culture, in that time, everyone wanted to be a rabbi. If you're a Jewish boy, you wanted to be a rabbi. And you grew up with the dream of being a rabbi. And what the parents would do is most of the boys, they would send to school for rabbinic training. But here's the thing. Only the best of the best of the best of the best of the best would ever be able to graduate that training to become a rabbi. And what would happen is like everyone would turn up to school, and then as schooling went, they would drop off to where there was only a couple left, and then they would like keep growing, and become a rabbi. And so most likely, I'm not saying definitely, but most likely, Zacchaeus has probably outworked that just like what his culture would. And so what that means, and which will make sense as we get through it, what that means is that he is incredibly well aware of his scriptures. And so part of that training, that they would memorize their Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible. And as that training went on, more books would be added to it. Memorized off by heart, which is what highlights and happens at the end of this. He highlights that he knows his scripture, which begs the question, the hypothetical question, of course. Like, if that is Zacchaeus, that he's followed the custom of most normal Hebrew kids of the time and upbringings, he grew up believing in God. He grew up probably studying his scriptures. He grew up engaging with faith. Most likely at this point, he still has a belief in God, but he's not outworking. And the question is why? The question is like, what moves someone from most likely having this cultural background to stealing from his own people? And the answer that I've given myself, and that you'd probably come up with as well, that somewhere in his history, there was a need that had to be met. His back was up against the wall. He had nowhere else to go. He was financially depleted. Starving, hungry, homeless, whatever it looks like. He had nowhere else to go. And so what do you do at those times? You are incredibly desperate. I've got to do something because I've got to put food on the table. Maybe the medical bills are stacking up for his parents. I don't know what it is. It's kind of beside the point. But at some point, most likely, back gets pushed up against the wall where he's got no choice. So he does whatever it is that he can do in order to make a buck. And that turns into something and turns into something and turns into something. We'd all know people that do that. And some of us in different ways have probably done the same thing as well. Which is probably exactly what he's done. But here's the thought. While he's done that, we would all know plenty of people that have been in that position that haven't chosen to do that as well. And so my suggestion would be this, that the reason is why, maybe his backup was against the wall, but the reason is realistically this, because somewhere his heart was out of alignment with God's. Somewhere in his journey, his heart left alignment with what God called him to do, and it went in a different direction. Which is exactly Zacchaeus. And so here in the story, Jesus is walking through the streets of Jericho. His reputation has gone ahead of him. And then Zacchaeus wants to see him. So it says this: he tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. And so because no one likes him, no one's letting him in to the front or putting him on their shoulders or whatever. No one likes the guy. And so he can't do that. So he does this. He ran ahead and he climbed a sycamore fig tree besides the road, for Jesus was going to pass by that way. And I love this. I love what Jesus does. So Zacchaeus can't get a seat to see him, so he climbs this fig tree and perches himself on this fig tree as Jesus is walking down the road. And you can imagine as Jesus is walking along, there's people there and he's greeting people, he's shaking hands and everything. I don't know what else comes with that. He's engaging people, connecting with people. As he goes along, he looks up and it says this: Jesus came by and he looked up at Zacchaeus and he called him by name, which would suggest that Jesus knew who he was. Jesus knew who he was, and so he calls him by name. And he calls him by name not to rebuke him, not to tell him how sinful he is, not to tell him how vile he is, how unholy he is. He calls him by name, and I love this. He calls him by name, and he says, Zacchaeus, come down quick, because I must be a guest at your house. I want to come to your place for dinner. We have this thought that so often we need to lead with what's wrong with people. But Jesus leads with trying to connect with people. We have a default that I need to do something in order to get Jesus' attention. And then this rolls into our generosity and our giving. So many Christians and people live this lie that if I give, I'll get God's attention. If I turn up to church, I'll get God's attention. If I pray, I'll get God's attention. If I worship, I'll get God's attention. If I start listening to sermons, I'll get God's attention. Worship music, God's attention. But here's the thing. Zacchaeus has done nothing to get Jesus' attention. All he's done is noticed a figure that he's infatuated with, and he's climbed the tree to try and get a look because he can't see over the crowds. And Jesus has decided that, you know what, I want to go to your place. He's done nothing to get his attention. So often we lead with this idea of I need to try and get God's attention or Jesus' attention. But it's this. The people get irritated because he hasn't done anything to earn it, because he's a despised tax collector. So the people push back and they're displeased, highlighting this, that he's gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner. In their mind, he's this, that Zacchaeus is the chief tax collector, which equals chief sinner, which equals chief scumbag. And they're looking at it as like, Jesus is going to his place for dinner. This guy hasn't earned it. This guy doesn't deserve it. He should not have Jesus' attention. So often we approach giving and worship and church and so many things with the same thing, trying to get Jesus' attention. Jesus' attention doesn't follow your obedience. Your obedience follows Jesus' attention. There's nothing Zacchaeus did. There's nothing Zacchaeus did to get Jesus' attention. What we watch as the story unfolds is it wasn't what he did that gained something. It was Jesus' attention, and then the follow-on is obedience out of that. When we flip it back the other way, it becomes something that we've got to work to get something, strive to get something. The reality is this: what we're watching outwork in the story of Zacchaeus and the story of your life is grace. Don't give, God still loves you. Don't turn up to church, God still loves you. Don't do, God still loves you. No one else may. You could be the worst person in the world and no one else will love you, but God still will. That's the good news of the story of Jesus. You don't do anything in order to earn anything. You're doing something comes out of the attention that you receive from Jesus. And so what we would call this grace, which the biblical definition would be this: the undeserved, unmerited favor of God. Like Zacchaeus, he didn't earn anything. He didn't do anything to receive it, but he got Jesus' favor. Likewise, it's the same for you. It's the undeserved, unmerited favor of God. This is so important when it comes to generosity, because what I do not ever want anyone to do is for us to go through a series on generosity and giving, and people end up twisting it to think that I must do in order to get. You have God's attention. Because you are created in the imago Dei, in the image of God. You have God's attention. Nothing you will ever do will subtract you from having that attention. And so this is what's happening here. The undeserved, unmerited favor of God. So you could look at it from this way. Grace saves you. The undeserved, unmerited favor of God, it saves you. But here's the thing. Alignment changes you. You can be saved, you can be set free, you can be healed, you can be all of that. You are saved by grace. Nothing you will ever do earns your salvation. You can go to church as much as you want. You can pray as much as you want. You can, nothing will earn your salvation. You can stop doing as much as you want. Nothing earns your salvation. But you will not be changed by grace alone. Grace is the attention. Obedience is the following. It's the same thing with giving. We don't give to get God's attention. We've already got it. It's the obedience that follows. And so grace saves you. Alignment is what changes you. Where you align your heart is what transforms your life. And so you've got grace is like this. It's connection. Alignment is something deeper. And so the thought is this: I can be connected to my wife, but not aligned with my wife. I can be connected to my church, but not aligned with my church. I can be connected to my faith, but not aligned with my faith. I can be connected to you can keep going with example after example after example. You can be connected and not aligned, and you'll be connected, but you'll never be transformed. I can be connected, married to my wife, but if I'm not aligned with my wife, our marriage is not going to get stronger. It will never get stronger. And it's the same thing with church and with Jesus and all that. We can be connected and not aligned. We can be connected and not going in the same direction, which is what's happening here. And here, with the thought being this: that every single one of us, God has a plan and a purpose for. God has a plan in store for your life, for my life, that He wants the best for us. Grace saves us, but alignment transforms us into that. Jesus says it like this in John 10:10. He says, the thief's purpose is to come and steal, kill, and destroy. My purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. I know we're talking about money, but when it says rich and satisfying, it's not talking about money like rich and satisfying. It's not talking about overflowing bank accounts filled with everything. It's talking about a heart that's overflowing. A heart that's overflowing with gratefulness, with thankfulness, with peace, with joy, with love. That's what he's talking about. You could reword it like this: that I didn't come just to give you breath in your lungs. That's a good thing, right? Breath in your lungs. It's kind of good that you're alive, that you're living and breathing. But God's got far more purpose in store for you. I came to give you a life that overflows. Not just has a little bit, but overflows with peace, with love, with hope, with purpose, and with wholeness. That no matter the season or the situation that you go through, when it's good times, you got this. When it's bad times, you're still overflowing with this. But that only comes from a heart that is aligned, which is the story that we're watching playing out. And so the crowd are pushing back. This guy is horrid. Why on earth? Why on earth? And so they're grumbling, they're upset, they're irritated. And Zacchaeus hears it. He hears the conversations and he stood before the Lord and he said this: I'll give half of my wealth to the poor. And if I have cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. And there's 2 ways of reading this, perhaps. Maybe he's being generous, which would be a better way of reading it than the second one. Because the other way of reading it is they could have said, he's giving away half of his money. Well, whoop-de-doo, you've got a lot. It's not going to hurt you. And then he could have been pushing back and be like, you know those shut up comments where you just throw a trump card out there? As far as, well, if you think I've cheated on people, well, I'm just going to give back 4 times as much. And so it just shuts the crowd up. It could be one of them, but it's probably neither of them. Because actually what's happening is here he is deliberately realigning his heart with what it is that God says. And this is where it goes back to that thought that I started with, that he knows his scripture. Because part of what God says in Exodus and in Numbers is this, that God prescribes at least a 4-fold restitution for theft. And so what Zacchaeus is doing is he's realigning his heart with the direction of God. This is what God's said to do. In this situation, I may not want to do this, I may not feel like doing this, but this is what God tells me to do. So I'm going to align my heart with my King. Jesus responds. Salvation, he says. Salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself. How's he done that? He's chosen an action that aligns his heart. This man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. He's chosen to align his heart. He's chosen to put his treasure somewhere, knowing and believing that his heart will follow. So the question is, what can we do? And it's this. This is meant to be pointed. This is meant to be a stretch. 2-part, 2-month challenge. This is meant to be a stretch. It's meant to be a stretch because what I want to encourage and challenge you to do is deepen your relationship with Jesus. So if you're all irritated about giving to the church, give somewhere else. Find an organization that you love. Go back to last week, like, where do I give? There's two questions to answer. Like, what am I grateful for? What breaks my heart? Answer those 2 questions. That's where your generosity goes, all right? So 2-part, 2-month challenge. And the first one is this. Choose a percentage of income and give it away within 1 week of receiving it. This is a 2-part, 2-month challenge. So 2 parts, and you do this for 2 months in order to do something. And then the second thing, we'll explain it a little bit more in detail. Choose a percentage. So if you're married, this is what you do. You'd sit down with your spouse and you'd ask the question of, like, how much are we going to give? If you're single, you'll sit with yourself. Like I said last week, my pre-planned jokes, they never land. My accidental jokes, everyone laughs about, but yeah, whatever. And so you choose a percentage. Sit down, discover, work out a percentage of how much it is that you are going to give. And here's my suggestion and my encouragement. This is meant to be a stretch. So I'd suggest that 1%, 2% is probably not enough. Because what it's meant to do, it's meant for you to deliberately say no to something in order to say yes to something else. It's meant to be a stretch. And so you choose a percentage, and then you commit to giving that as soon as it comes in, like whenever it comes in. The second part is this: pay attention to the internal tension that this creates in you. So you choose a percentage and then pay attention to the internal tension that this creates in you. So, like, what comes up when you do this? Maybe upon, like, me talking about this is already irritation and anger and frustration. Fantastic, I'd applaud that. And this is what I'd ask you to do. Write it down and journal it. That's what it's meant to do. You're meant to pay attention to the tension. So what comes up when you give? When this is happening, like, what comes up? Is there fear? Is there anxiety? Is there irritation? Is there anger? Is there stress? What comes up when you do this? What comes up? What's the tension that you feel? We need to be paying attention to that, not just throw it to the side. We're meant to deliberately pay attention to it. I'll ask the worship team to come up, please. Pay attention to it. And this is important, because that comment that Jesus makes in Matthew 6, where he says that where your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will follow. Just a couple of verses after that, he says this. He says, no one can serve 2 masters. No one can serve 2 masters. For you'll hate one and love the other. You'll be devoted to one and despise the other. And then he gets to this point where he says, you cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. Understand, what he's not saying is that money is evil. What he's not saying is that having money is evil. What he's not saying that having bank accounts for savings, bank accounts for holidays, bank accounts for retirement, he's not saying prioritizing that is evil. And if you think that is, I can sit down with you and show you Bible verse after Bible verse. We're being an incredibly good steward of your money in all areas is an incredibly godly thing to do. That the encouragement would be that you're saving for retirement, that you're saving for a rainy day, that you're putting away, that you're working on holidays, you're working on memory creation. That would be a healthy thing. But amongst that we're generous individuals. What he's saying is you cannot be enslaved to God and money, because here's the reality. The biggest tension creator between you and your relationship with God, most likely, is money. Is money. The reality is this: when it comes to giving, you're not just giving to a building or giving to a service. You are giving towards hope. In fact, your giving is what funds a moment where a young mum walks into church for the first time, scared, unsure, but desperate to believe that love still exists. It helps a teenager hear, maybe for the first time, that they are seen, known, worth fighting for. It builds the kind of community that makes people say, I don't believe what they believe, but I want what they have. Chris and I, a little while back, had lunch with someone that this was them. They watched online, they turned up, they engaged with us, and this was their comment. I'm an atheist. I don't even believe what you believe, but I've watched and I've followed, and I'd love to have what you have. That's what generosity is funding. The truth is, giving isn't just about donating to a building. It's about investing in stories that will echo into eternity. You're not just giving something that does not much. Your small amount of giving has a massive impact. So perhaps to circle all the way back to those opening questions, like why? Why does nothing else create stress like money? Why do we admire generous people but struggle? Perhaps it's highlighting that we have a heart out of alignment with the King, that we put a hand up to following. How about you stand? Let me pray for you. Father, this is a struggle for all of us, myself included. But God, I don't, and I know we don't, want to go through life not being a generous individual. We want to be a church, we want to be individuals, we want to be people that are generous with our whole lives, generous with our speech, generous with our time, generous with our attention, generous with our resources, generous with our giving, with our generosity, God. We want to be a church, we want to be individuals that haven't just kind of put a hand up for you, but have deliberately put a hand up to you and said, we are all in. We are all in following the direction of our King. So God, I want to pray for those that wrestle with this, Jesus. I get the wrestle and the feelings that this brings up, Jesus. And God, I pray that they're able to sit in the tension of that wrestle and work through that and connect with your presence with it and allow your presence to minister with them. I want to pray for those of us that are already perhaps doing it, God, that we reconnect with you and ask the question of how much. Is there more? Is there what? And Jesus, I pray that we are all people that don't just listen to a message like this and say that's a good thing, or yes, I should. But we listen to a message like this and have this understanding that we are meant to be people that are following in the example of our King. In Jesus' name, amen.
Every good thing comes from you. Say it again, every good thing. Every good thing comes from you. Say it again, every good thing. Every good thing comes from you. Every good thing comes from you.
Oh.
Every good thing. Oh, every good thing. Oh, every good thing. Oh, sing, you never cease. You never cease to amaze us. All of the praises, Lord, they belong to you. Jesus, receive all the glory. Take all the credit for what you're about to do. You never cease to amaze us. All of the praises, Lord, they belong to you. Jesus, receive all the glory. Take all the credit for what you're about to do. Every good thing comes from you. Every good thing comes from you. Every good thing. Oh, every good thing. Oh, every good thing. Oh, every good thing.
Yeah, every good thing comes from you, God. Thank you, Jesus. You know what? We've still got time. What if you would like prayer? It's never too late to ask people. It's never too late. Like if you're sitting out in there later and you decide that you need some prayer, it's never too late. Come up and find someone. We want to pray with you. We want to love on you. Other than that, how about everyone, we head out and have a cuppa and spend some time together and connect with each other, hey? All right, have a great week.